Morning, guys. I'm going to be with you in just a second. Okay, good morning, everybody. Just making sure everybody can hear me okay and that I'm going to be able to answer all your questions. And so I'm going to follow along on here on Facebook as well. Hey, Ronnie, how are you doing? Thanks for saying hello. We have Judith in Covington, Linda, and Simone in Cutoff. And so, yes, we are going to be talking about Cutoff. That is for sure. All right, let's see here. All right. Okay, guys. We're going to be beginning in just a moment. Okay, obviously, we have got a very complicated situation developing. The thing that I want everybody to know this morning is that, yes, we have a threat not only from Marco, but potentially Laura. Marco is the most immediate concern right now, mainly because Marco is farther east, a little bit farther east and north, the center is, than it was last night when I talked to you. It is also strengthening fairly rapidly. Now, it was forecasted to be near hurricane strength at the tip of the Yucatan, and that appears to be what has happened this morning. I want to make sure I can get y'all's questions on here too. I think I can. Shannon, yes, good morning. And there's Pam and Roy. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a look now. This is the newest advisory on Marco. You may have seen Zach Fradella talking about it on Fox 8 just a little while ago. Marco, the center, is now sitting out here east of Cozumel. And so the thinking was last night that it might go over the tip of the Yucatan. Now, that would not have impacted the chance of let's say, weakening because this area of the Yucatan is pretty flat anyway. But the fact that the center has reformed or formed and moved so much farther to the east has potentially huge implications here in South Louisiana. We may have to prepare for a hurricane on Monday from Marco. That is going to be a possibility as this track is shifted and the storm is getting dramatically stronger. There is some good news, though. The good news is that some of the winds are unfavorable in the northern Gulf, as we've been talking about, and so hopefully that would put the brakes on any intensification from Marco as it moves off to the north. Notice the movement right now, guys, is north-northwest at 12 miles per hour. Not moving super fast, but it's moving right through the Yucatan Channel. This is some of the hottest water really anywhere on the planet. I mean, it's broiling hot right there in the Yucatan Channel. So there's the latest forecast. Tomorrow morning, a Category 1, an 85 mile per hour storm, still on that northwest heading with no bend to the west. And because of that, we have to be concerned that this is going to come dangerously close to the Louisiana coastline. Monday morning, the forecast now calls for a Category 1 just south of Barataria Bay and Grand Isle. Now look at the intensity forecast. The intensity was 85 on Monday morning. It's 80. All right, and that's because of this wind shear across the northern Gulf. Now, the only thing I'm going to caution with this right now is that Marco Mini Marco is a very small storm. And so small storms can do two things. They can ramp up really quickly, like it looks like Marco is trying to do right now, or they can fall apart real quickly. And certainly we hope the latter is going to be the case. And so when you look at this and when you look at the cone, remember the center could be all the way out here, or it could even be a little further to the east. It's not always going to be inside here. But the bottom line is the east side of this system is getting closer to Southeast Louisiana, and that means the chance that we're going to have some impacts is likely increasing. In fact, there are models this morning that are now bringing this directly toward the Barataria Bay on Monday morning, Monday afternoon, which would be in line with this track from the Hurricane Center, which has us on the eastern cone. So the message this morning is we may have a hurricane sooner rather than later based on what the trends are this morning. So that's the Monday morning position. Notice the bend back to the west-northwest and weakening Tuesday morning as it approaches southwest Louisiana or the upper Texas coast. And the thinking is it would really run into the wind shear here, and that's why the storm, the intensity drops from 80 to around 60 miles per hour. And whatever is left of Marco is going to rain itself out over East Texas during the day on Sunday as it appears right now. All right, here's a satellite picture this morning, and it's a very small storm, but nonetheless, it is becoming more organized. There's a very tight center that's trying to develop right there in the Yucatan Channel. The hurricane hunters have been in there all morning, and the pressure is continuing to drop. It's at 992 millibars, which is sort of, it depends on the size of the storm, but as a general rule, below 992 is when you're approaching a Category 1 storm. So Marco is going to try to take a run at that. It's a very small storm, so it would likely need some pressures that were even a little bit lower. And if we put the center on there, that's where you can see right now the center of the storm, unfortunately sitting right over those hot waters of the Yucatan Channel. Warnings in effect right now. We've got tropical storm warnings in blue for the northern part of the Yucatan, the western tip of Cuba. There are no warnings for Southeast Louisiana. However, based on the latest computer models, based on the forecast track and the size of the storm, that's the key. The radii of winds, how far out the winds extend with Marco, aren't going to be real far. But that could mean that we need some watches, at least for the coast. I don't know about Lake Pontchartrain, but unless something really changes and it comes right over us. But if it skirts along the coast, we could have to have tropical storm or hurricane watches issued in the next few hours. That would be coming this afternoon. Possible watches for the Louisiana coastline in the next couple of hours. All right, latest computer models. Now what I've done, you see the thick red line on there? Let me point it out for you right here. This is what's known as the consensus model, or one of the consensus models. And this is the one that the National Hurricane Center oftentimes will at least preliminarily base the center line of the cone on. And notice that the consensus line is sort of on the right side of things. And that basically mirrors what the cone is that we just saw. This is shifted dramatically east from where it was yesterday. Yesterday, the consensus line, when I left you yesterday evening, was kind of sitting over here, and now it's over here. And obviously, that means impacts are going to be more likely for Southeast Louisiana. And then the consensus models show the bend back toward the west, and then kind of just sitting here and as a weak low, really, and beginning to dissipate as Laura begins to take over in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. All right, let's talk about the wind shear in the upper air forecast. Let me check in here right now. Patricia's in St. James Parish. Are we going to have high winds Sunday? Unless Marco moves directly over you, then you're not going to have high winds on Sunday. Again, what we're going to be watching, though, is tide levels coming up for sure, even with Marco if it goes by to our west, and they're going to stay up, waiting on Laura. And so that's the problem there. Denise, Terrebonne Parish, if you're outside levee protection, you could have rising water due to Marco. How much? We're not sure yet. storm surge. We're going to be able to start talking a little bit more about that later on this afternoon. All right, so let's talk about the wind shear graphic we have here. If you guys have been watching me on Fox 8, we've been talking about this a lot. Here is the jet stream dip. This is what's pulling Marco to the northwest right now. All right, but these are generally unfavorable winds for development. But the strongest of those winds, Marco, because it's so tiny, is avoiding it for the time being. But as we get into Monday, the thinking is it may run into some of these winds, and that's why the Hurricane Center takes it from 85 down to 80. It's still a storm, all right? Let's not split hairs over this. But really, what we're saying is that it's going to be somewhat unfavorable in the northern Gulf. But if the storm gets this close, we're going to have the wind, we're going to have the tides coming up. Somebody's going to have some heavy rain bands either way. And then the next thing to worry about is what is Laura going to be doing? Now, with Laura, look on Monday. You see that in the southeastern Gulf? Oh boy. Low wind shear, no wind shear whatsoever. And so that's not the whole game in town. There's lots of other elements that can make a hurricane strengthen or weaken. But warm waters and low wind shear, those are two pretty big factors that we're going to have to take into consideration with Laura as it enters the Gulf. And there you can see Marco moving off into Texas, and then potentially on Wednesday, Laura approaching the Louisiana coastline. Here's a satellite picture of Laura this afternoon, or this morning, I should say. Jumping the gun, not quite to this afternoon, but getting there. And Laura has actually, we just got an update from the Hurricane Center. Let me see what it said here. I believe they increased the wind slightly on Laura, probably because some observations. It says, satellite indicates winds in Laura are now 45. So they were 40. They've increased around 45 miles per hour due to some heavy winds and rain just south of Puerto Rico. And so Laura definitely looks more organized than it did last night when there wasn't much going on with it at all. Let's switch over now to, there's the track with it moving over Puerto Rico. Here's the radar out of San Juan. And if we take a look at this, you would say, hey, that looks like that's the center of the storm right there. But actually, it's over here. There's another, what we call mid-level center down to the south and east. So it's not a super organized storm, but it is more than it was. And look at all this rain that's getting ready to come into Puerto Rico right now. St. Croix, the British Virgin Islands, St. Bart getting some pretty heavy rains as well. Squally weather, but nothing that's overall too super significant. And there's the track. So there's where the center is right now, even though you see that swirl that's currently down to the south and the east. Here is the 11 o'clock advisory on Laura. It's 40 miles southwest of Ponce, Puerto Rico, and it's continuing to move west at 18. So remember, guys, remember what I was saying the last couple of days about this is that it's going to really depend on this land interaction. That's the immediate concern, is how much land this rolls over. And I mean, it looks like it's going to be quite a bit. If we spool it out, there's tomorrow morning, and there's the track right over the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And so notice that the intensity forecast, that isn't changed. That's still at 45 miles per hour. And so that makes sense that it's not going to get any stronger going over land. And it really may sit there and move over most of Cuba. And so they've got it as a 50 mile per hour storm on Monday morning. Could possibly be a little bit weaker. That's certainly going to be the case. But what we're really, really watching for is what happens in the Southeast Gulf. So here is the brand new intensity forecast. So here's Tuesday morning. Remember, Marco is by then is probably over here by Houston and weakening. And then here comes Laura, Category 1, 75 mile per hour storm. Possibly strengthening a little bit more, 85 mile per hour storm on Wednesday morning. And notice all of South Louisiana, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, currently in the cone for potential impacts from Laura as approaches from the east-southeast. And we also have to remember the intensity forecast is like really uncertain. Why? It's uncertain because we don't know what shape Laura is going to be in when it emerges from Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. That's the first thing. The second thing is, where is the center going to be as far as the track? So this track, I imagine, will swing around a little bit over the next 24 to 48 hours, depending on if the center ends up north of the islands or south of the islands, or potentially moving right over it. But this graphic that you're seeing right here, the message for that, is that we need to be prepared for a hurricane. Now, that being said, we may now have to prepare for Marco on Monday. And so basically, you should be ready to implement your hurricane plan this weekend. That's what I was telling you guys last night. And it looks like Thursday, the storm continuing to push inland. Let's look at the GFS ensembles. And what are the GFS ensembles? Well, this is the global forecast system. This is the main global forecast model for the United States. And of course, there's the European as well, which I cannot display those models the same way. But there are some similarities. And basically what the ensembles are doing is it's playing around with the atmosphere and seeing how the storm would behave under different situations. And last night there was a pretty large spread with the ensembles. It had a lot more kind of down here to the south and some over here, but there's really quite a bit of agreement, unfortunately, now aimed here at the northern Gulf Coast, maybe as far west into southeast Texas. So this is certainly a signal that Laura may be coming in our general direction as well. Warnings are up, obviously, for Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. We have tropical storm warnings for Turks and Caicos, Southeast Bahamas. Central Bahamas has a watch, in eastern Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, a tropical storm watch is in effect there. All right, steering. We're going to look at steering. And let's see, Robert wants to know, is there a chance that Laura ends up following Marco inland? Based on what we're seeing here, yeah, there's a chance that we could have impacts from both of these storms, whether indirectly or directly. Certainly that possibility is there. It looks like they're going to be about 36 or 48 hours apart, the way things are looking right now. All right, so let's talk about the steering. And so let's see, here's Laura, and here's our strong area of high pressure. And there's our jet stream dip that's starting to slowly lift out. But see, that jet stream dip, it's leaving a hole there in the Gulf, an opening for Marco. And a lot of times these storms, they want to go toward the dip. So that's what Marco's doing. It's going toward the weakness in the atmosphere, and it's moving at about 12 miles an hour. So let's take this into Sunday night. And there we can see there's still the alleyway for the storm. We've been talking about this for days, that the storm is going to follow the alley. It could be anywhere from Texas to Louisiana. And then Laura down here is going to be following this big area of high pressure. So there's the high pressure. It's strengthening. It's continuing to drag Laura from the east and to the west. And then here we go into Monday and into Tuesday. And there's the high building along. And so there's Marco. Marco, again, the strongest part of the high is just east of us. So the brighter the reds you see there, that's where the strongest area of the high pressure is. So there's still some weakness in here that could certainly allow Marco to come as far east as the New Orleans area. And there's Laura right behind it. And so let's spool this out. And we can see that the high never really builds past Louisiana. It never really builds past us until after Laura is passed on Thursday. And so that's why, unfortunately, we've got this window of opportunity along the Texas and Louisiana coast to see impacts from possibly both of these systems as they continue to move in that general direction. So that's kind of how things stand right now. We are watching things very closely at Fox 8. We are fully staffed 24 hours now. I do anticipate that some watches could come out for parts of the Louisiana coastline later on this afternoon. That would be for Marco. If we do see impacts from Laura, as far as watches go, we could see watches issued for Laura as early as tomorrow night, or perhaps as late as on Monday morning. I know it's a lot to think about right now, but We just need to be vigilant, and the most important thing is for you guys to be ready and be ready to shelter in place unless you're in a low-lying area outside the hurricane risk reduction system, and there are calls for voluntary evacuations. As always, heed what emergency managers are saying. I'm Chief Meteorologist David Bernard. Zach Fradella is going to be back on around 1 o'clock with an update on Facebook as well, and we'll be here throughout the afternoon and night. Stay safe.